Hey, Cookies here, and it is time to go over Tazavesh hard mode. I finished it on day one, and I just wanted to talk about each boss. We'll probably skip through most of the trash, if not all of it. So we're just going to talk about bosses, because the trash is pretty straightforward. And then maybe talk about a couple small things that happen in between the bosses, like events and stuff. So for this first boss on hard mode, the difference is that there's a bunch of trash that spawns after you activate the boss, and it's pretty unrealistic to kill all the trash unless you have like really big AoE cooldowns, but the trash hits pretty hard. So you just have to use really limited space here. So if you can see, essentially what it is we should have two markers down, I think, if I am moving. Oh, maybe we actually ended up moving them. So basically we're just using one side of the room, and then as stuff is spawning on the floor, we're going to move slowly to the other side of the room. So this is the major mechanic we'll talk about here, this interrogation. And basically what it does is going to fixate one player, and when this cast finishes, the boss is going to stun that player and walk towards them. If he reaches them, they die, and you have to kill, like you'll see, it creates this little containment cell like this that you have to DPS down before the boss gets to them and kills them. The boss will also kill you if you stand in the way, so you want to make sure you watch out for that. And then the thing to note about this is you can immune this. So you have to immune it when the boss begins the focus. So when the boss is like this, and when he targets you first with the ability, wait till it pops up again. Right here, interrogation, he's channeling it on Taco. So if Taco has an immunity, you can use Bubble, you can use Cloak, you can use Turtle, you can use all those kind of, like, you know, things like that that keep debuffs off of you. Specifically like magic debuffs, I think. And then I haven't tested everything, so I don't know if like AMS and Spell Reflect and all that stuff works, but I know Bubble and Ice Block and Cloak definitely work. And then as long as he casts the immunity before this channel finishes, then the ability just doesn't work and the boss will just stand still. But if you pop your immunity now, you can probably bubble out of the cell, but you can't like cloak when you're stunned inside the cell or anything. The other thing that you're going to notice is when the cell blows up, when you free the player out of the cell, it does a lot of damage to the group. So like try to make sure every single player is topped off during this, and everyone should be using defensives like when you're gonna kill the cell, because it does like a lot of damage. This was actually, surprisingly, this first boss was actually probably the hardest out of all the bosses in the entire dungeon on hard mode, like even including the last boss. I think it was just because we had 4 melee, so the space is like so limited that it just gets really annoying. As a paladin, you can bop or bubble and run through these. Obviously, bubble works, but you can also bop because they're physical. So here you're going to see the rogue cloak. So there's the cloak. And do you see now he didn't get targeted by the stun at all, and it just kind of skipped through the phase. So the next major mechanic is this right here. When you get silenced, you have to find this little disc on the floor, and it will have... You'll probably see, you didn't see it right there, but it spawns like your weapon on top of it. As soon as it spawns your weapon on top of it, like whatever, you know, transmog you have for your weapon, you walk over it and pick it up. So that's pretty straightforward. But again, like the limited space makes it really awkward. So if it ends up spawning like in, you'll see it later, it ends up doing this. It spawns like in the twirling swords. So ideally you pop like an immunity and walk through it and pick it up. Here's the interrogation again. This time our rogue can't immune it, so he's going to go walk to this corner over here. And then now we have to free him out, but it is incredibly limited in how much space we have. He ends up dying anyways to the explosion. So does our other rogue. And then I don't press bubble and I walk through to get my weapon and die. So I should have just bubbled there. But yeah, the space just gets really limited. The best advice I can give is try to do a lot of damage early on, and then just use defensives on the every time you're freeing someone from the cage, and like make sure that everyone's full health. So as a healer, you really want to top everybody off when they're freeing the other player. You shouldn't, like, what I was doing is helping free the player, but I should just be healing and topping everyone off and stuff. Okay, so boss number 2, Postmaster. Basically, the way this boss works is, I'll show the mechanics as we go, but the boss fight ended up being bugged when we did it on day 1. It's probably fixed by now by the time you watch this video, hopefully, or it'll be fixed very soon. But what we ended up doing is just trying to kill the boss as fast as possible with cooldowns and lust, and a Ashen with a, you know, like a Venthyr Holy Paladin, before any of the mechanics like took effect and we had to worry about them. So that was our strategy, just to get over, because the bug was like making it almost impossible to do. But I'll show you guys like how the fight is kind of intended as stuff pops up. So first, there is all these little swirlies that are going to spawn. You basically just want to stand in these and soak them, and they spawn in a way to where you can kind of like soak the first one that spawned and then run through each of them, but you should still have multiple people help. Again, we ended up ignoring them just so that we don't have to worry about them at all, and just so that we could DPS the boss. And then the next major mechanic is going to be this. You just group soak this or immune it. It doesn't do that much damage, so I would advise just group soaking it. And then the main mechanic of the fight is he's going to drop all these little bombs on the floor right here that you can see. The intention of the fight is that you walk over these, pick them up, and then you're rooted on the floor, and you have to throw the bombs to each other and catch them without them touching the ground. They can only be touching the ground when they spawn. And then you throw them to other players, and then there's going to be one of these chutes that are active. You can't really see it right now. There we go, there's a better angle. So there's like these chutes right here. You have to take the bombs and throw them into these chutes. So you have to pass them to each other, and then the last person has to throw them in the chute, and you have to do that for all 4 bombs. The bug was that we couldn't pick up the bombs properly. They would like sometimes instantly drop and then never be picked. We couldn't ever pick them up again. So we just ended up going with this whole like lust and burn strategy. And that's it. So the next part of the dungeon that I will mention is this little mini game. So you're going to go over here and you start the RP. They're doing it right now. And then there's like a little shopkeeper that opens up right here that they're standing next to. You trade the shopkeeper and buy this item. You can see our shaman carrying it around right now. He has a debuff. And you have to take whatever item type it is and take it to the merchant that would want the item. So here it's like a book. So I think there's a merchant that like wants expensive tomes or something like that. Like they're all labeled in a certain way. Like this one's like an expert tailor. This one's, I think it's this guy right here. Yeah, he's like a historical tome guy or something. Like they all have little titles, and you're basically just, and then now he'll give you an item. So now he has like a weapon. So there's like a magic weapons vendor. So we're gonna take this to that person, and I think you have to do it a total of 3 times, and then you'll get told a password. So the password is Crimson Knife, and then we go over here to this door, give the guy the password, and then now you get into this section of the dungeon. So that's all I wanted to mention about that. Okay, so this is the 3rd boss that we did. Nothing too special about this one. You have to hit him from the side that doesn't have a shield, and then you have to interrupt him when he casts. And then he's gonna do a pull-in, and the person, I'm not sure if you have to use any of the other instruments, but I know the drums, they kept activating and I had to keep using them. So there's basically instruments in this fight, and when you see these little notes pop up on the floor, you need to aim your character at them and then press your extra action button, and it will like use the instrument to blow up all the notes in front of you. The different instruments do different like patterns of shooting, so like the drums just do like a straight line. And then the thing you have to be aware of is the boss is casting crowd control, which is this big random frontal in a random direction. And he can cast that while you're like over here on the instruments. Yeah, it actually happened a minute ago, but I'm just tanky enough to where I didn't get one shot by it. So just be aware that you might have to jump off of the drums and help out, like if you're, if you have anything under you, or if he does this crowd control directly at you, you want to jump off and move out of the way. But you can jump off occasionally and stuff. And you can also cast while you're on the drum, so it's probably best to just put like a ranged DPS on it, honestly. Yeah, that boss is really straightforward. You just use all the instruments, play the little mini game, the boss spawns, and then you just kill the boss real quick. He doesn't really have that many mechanics or anything crazy. Okay, so next up is the fourth boss. This one is actually pretty cool. I like this one. So this first mob that you fight, I actually don't even remember what the first one does. I only remember the second one. It does an AoE that you get out of, a lot of obvious stuff. And then this debuff that the tank has, this gluttony debuff, now I have it. You want to stay away from other players with it. And then this second boss, he's going to spawn all these orbs that you can see around. You don't want to soak those ones, but well, I'll just wait until this boss spawns. These you take out, you can dispel one if you want, or immune it or whatever. Purge that and then interrupt it, or break the shield. Okay, so right here, the venting protocol, you're going to get out of the way, he's going to knock you back, and then you need to not soak these orbs. The person with the consumption, so our tank has it at the moment, he wants to just be running around and soaking any orbs that get in the way. And I think you basically get like a big damage buff if you, like, depending on how many orbs you soak. So you can see our rogue just running around and soaking as many orbs as he can. And then everyone else should be staying away from them. Then we have another venting protocol. He knocks us all back. And then now the other boss is going to do like a pull-in effect. So that makes it kind of hard to dodge some of these. And that's why we want to be soaking as many of them as we can with the gluttonous thing. Because it starts to get overwhelming in the room, especially when the boss pulls you in. And then when this guy dies, the mechanical guy, he'll still just be shooting out orbs constantly in all directions. So have to keep soaking orbs and probably stay away from his body. So like here, we should have pulled the boss like way over here into the corner or something, so that we're not right next to the body of the second boss, or this little bad. And then other than that, I don't think this boss really does anything. Now I have gluttony, so you'll see me run around. Yeah, you get some kind of buff. I don't remember exactly what the buff does, but it's probably nice. Cool, and that's that boss. Okay, so the next boss is very interesting. I will do my best to explain it. This is another boss that was just like, we just ended up going for the Zerg strat and just kind of DPSing it before it does anything. But I'll try to show you guys kind of what the fight looks like realistically if you don't have like the damage to just murder it. So the boss is basically, I'll just pause this for a second. So the boss has all these different like marks. They have circle, square, and triangle marks. There's pairs of them, and they're gonna just move around the room constantly until a certain thing happens, and then they all stop. The whole point of these is, say you step in one of the circle ones, it's going to teleport you to the other circle one. If you step into the square, it's going to teleport you to the other square. So on and so forth. So what the boss does is the boss is going to divide the room in half, you'll see. I think it'll happen right about here. Okay, not yet. Okay, so what happens is you can see behind us, or behind it so much. So you can see behind, I think it's the circle. Yeah, so this circle, it detonates. You can see this little circle thing spawning right here. It's going to shoot a pulse out. You do not want to get hit by this, so the way you avoid it is you find a teleporter that will take you into a safe spot. So here we want to teleport into circle, and then it'll teleport us through past the lines. And then at the same time, you need to also teleport over to the other side of the boss. So in this case, we would use square, teleport to the other side of the room, and then you need to interrupt the boss 2 times, or if you're on hard mode, then you need to do it 3 times, and you have to do it like in a row. And the boss can also, like, I'm pretty sure the boss can like jump back and forth between the sides. So there's the first interrupt, and now he's casting again on the other side. So now someone needs to be over here and interrupt the boss. And then the boss will teleport to the other side one more time and needs to be interrupted again. So there we interrupt it. And then I think that was like our third interrupt because I think we did 2 over here. But we're just all split up, so it's like kind of messed up. And I think I couldn't take the portal because I had bubble. Maybe I couldn't tell what it was. So there you can see the pulse going out from over here on triangle. So this one is really awkward because the room split apart. So I think the way I'd want to do it, oh, okay. So the way you would do this in this case is I would need to use circle to go over here to circle, and then I would use triangle to get inside the safe zone. If that makes sense. So it gets really like complicated on like what kind of patterns you need to follow, and you have to be following the boss, and you have to do all this stuff, and then when the boss gets to like 25% health, he's gonna split the room again into fourths rather than in half. So it definitely gets pretty, it gets really hectic, honestly. So, like I said, what we ended up doing is just zerging it. I think we end up doing it right here. Yeah, so we're pushing the boss. The first divide happens, and because we push the boss so fast, he just never cast the pulsing ability. Like I think we just phased him too quickly, and it like reset the timer on the Q time because now he divides the room again. Still no cast on the annihilation thing or the pulse. Still no cast. Still no cast. And he's gonna do it at like the very, very end here. So here's the cast. It's called. And we just burn the boss before the circle gets to us. We just start running away and then just kill the boss. So, but you can do this fight normally. It's just, it was kind of complicated, so we just burned it down and it ended up just kind of working. This fight is pretty cool. You're going to need somebody who coordinates things and then the other people who are running around doing the jobs. So, I would put your healer or your... I would probably just put your, now that I'm thinking about it, I would just always put your healer on the console. So there is, what you can see, there's consoles throughout the whole room. There's one up here, there's one down here, and then there's 2 on the other side as well. And then there's this one up here in the center. The one in the center is the one that you're going to want your healer to go to. And then the 4 other ones, you don't have to go to those, but you are going to need to use them. So first thing, boss does a big sweeping frontal, so stay away from him and watch for the tank because the tank's going to be moving around the room a little bit. The next thing is this purified beam. It's going to target one player and they just need to either pop an immunity. We had our rogues popping cloak, or they need to run and kite the beam around and it drops all these pools on the floor, so try to drop them kind of towards the middle of the room rather than the outsides of the room. And the boss does another big frontal. And then the boss is going to spawn adds. This breaker needs to be interrupted before it finishes its cast. And then these vault purifiers, they heal and shield the boss and also block the minigame. So it's important to kill them too. So it's basically kill adds and then worry about boss afterwards. Always focus adds. Here's that beam. It's on me. Just kind of running in a really bad line, honestly. That was like a really bad way of doing it. But what I should have done is just popped bubble and stayed. Okay, so here's the intermission when he does this sanitizing cycle. So one person needs to go and activate this console. Make sure you don't interrupt the channel because it's a channel ability. So once you click on it, you need to completely stand still and not cast anything or do anything. And then you're going to see these runes pop up one at a time on your screen. No one else will see this. It's only the person that's clicking on the console. And then you need to tell the rest of your group where these are. So what I'm saying is, as it's popping up, here, I'll back up just a tiny, tiny bit. Probably backed up too much, but that's okay. We'll just wait for it to pop up again. So what I'm saying as it pops up is this. I go up to it, I click, blue top left, purple top right, red bottom right, and yellow bottom left. And then I'll just kind of I'll look behind me because you can turn your camera and stuff, and I'll see if everyone's going to the right spot. And then if I see someone that looks confused and they aren't going to anywhere, I'll just repeat theirs, or I'll just repeat the whole sequence again, like if I really need to. But we're all good there. So they each get one of these runes on these like runes will spawn on the floor. They pick them up, the different colored runes, and then they just need to run to whichever one you tell them to, and they need to slot them into these consoles according to what you see. And then the boss gets stunned, and then you're done. And then you just do the same thing again. So more ads spawn, and then the boss usually goes into another intermission, and then that's the whole fight. That's the whole idea with the console. And the reason I would say your healer should do the main console is because there can be ads alive during the intermission. So that means that the tank needs to hold them and tank them, and then the DPS need to obviously kill them. And the healer doesn't really need to do anything during the intermission. So it's probably best to put your healer up there. There's that lightning nova that needs to be interrupted. If that goes off, it just debuffs the whole group with like a slow, which is really annoying for the intermission. And then it does a bunch of damage, so that cast. Looks like we end up killing the boss. Oh yeah, I remember. We kill the boss like right before he goes into the intermission. And he's immune to damage during that too, so that would have been very terrifying. But there's that. Cool. Next boss is pretty straightforward. The way this boss is going to work is... Turn it up. These zones that spawn, they just slow you if you're in them. So you just pretty much stay out of them. This giant frontal that the boss does will one-shot any ads. So you want to use the frontal to kill the ads. It's probably better, in retrospect, to put the boss like over here on the side of the room. That way, because the ads always spawn from like where the water is. So that way you have like a bigger frontal to aim at the ads and kind of kill them all. And then it's a dragon boss, so stay away from its tail. Otherwise you get hooked and take a bunch of damage. Go for the swirlies. Again, here's another slow zone, so it makes it a little hard to dodge stuff. The fire patch on the ground, so you want to stay out of that. There, I get hooked. This gets really hectic just because we're moving the boss around so much. There's the breath. And ideally, we have like the boss, like I said, over here in the kind of this pocket area by the wall, because then the frontal's a lot easier to move. And then here you just get gripped towards the boat. If you get gripped into the water, you die. You just, I couldn't tell if the slow zones actually help or not. It didn't seem like they did at all, but I could be wrong. But I think maybe you use the slow zones to like stop yourself from getting pulled so much. And then you can use abilities like Hand of Freedom and all of that stuff, immunities, to help out. I see, because it doesn't seem like the slow zones help at all. Like when I fall out of the slow zone right here, like I'm just running against it still. So I think as long as you just run against it, you're kind of fine. It's hilarious how like hectic this is getting. But yeah, that's the whole boss. It's really, honestly, this was like probably the easiest boss. Pretty sure we one-shot this one. And that's the whole fight. Aim the frontal at the ads, stay out of the slow zones, dodge all the swirlies, and don't get hooked into the water. Cool, now we just got the last boss. Alright, so we have the last boss now. What I would recommend is setting up 5 markers, just like this. You have one up at top by the boss, you have 2 that are kind of down a little bit more but lined up, and then you have 2 more that are lower, kind of towards the bottom section of the encounter space. And I will explain why in a second. And all you're going to do is assign each player to 1 marker. So I was on green, we had our Shaman on purple, we had our rogues on blue and orange, and then we had our tank on X. And it's just for one specific mechanic in the fight. So first thing, there's some assassins that spawn, just 2 little ads. You need to interrupt them. You can also stun them to interrupt them. And you just kind of cleave them down and kill them. You just want to interrupt those shuriken blitzes. They like teleport away and cast it. And then you have this collapsing star. So this is like the main mechanic of the fight. And on hard mode, it makes it a little bit harder. So essentially what this is it's a giant circle that spawns. And then when someone steps into the circle, it's going to do a pull in like this for a few seconds. You can see while this debuff lasts. And then you have to keep bouncing people into it. Once this debuff expires, you don't want to do it while the debuff is on you. And even here, there's still a little circle left, so you have to soak it one more time. So we wait till the debuff goes away, then we soak it. And then all you're trying to do is get rid of that on the ground before it explodes. It explodes after like, I think 40 or 35 seconds or something of it being on the ground. So you'll see it again in the fight and I'll kind of re-explain it. And it puts like a big dot on everybody, so I'm going to be careful and probably use a lot of defensives there. Pretty healing intensive. Here's the ads again, just repeating. And here at 40%, I believe, is when we deal with like the actual mechanic of the fight, or like the main thing. Here it is. This is where we were all like winging this, so we didn't know what was going on yet. So you don't actually have to do anything. You can just keep DPSing the boss. You can still just keep DPSing the boss. You don't need to be standing out here like this. So relocation, when the boss relocates these, everyone is going to run to one of them. So the way that we organized it so that we didn't worry about, you know, accidentally running to the same ones, is that's what the markers are for. So you go to whichever star is closest to your marker. So for instance, this would be mine. This one would be our rogues. This one would be our tanks, I think. And then this one would be our other rogues. And then this one down here would be our shamans. And you're going to have all these lines pointing to each player. You just need to make sure that your line, whoever you're connected with, is going through your little orb that you're next to. So you stand on like the opposite side of it compared to the arrow that's pointing at you. And then it dashes through all the little orbs. And then you're done. Let me close out my Discord so notifications. And then the next thing is the boss is going to hit all the stars and it's going to explode out for a bunch of damage. So watch out for that. And we weren't sure if like we could move in yet or not, but it's totally fine to move in. Like you don't have to be standing out here anymore like we are. We just didn't know. They explode, and then we have to deal with this zone. Remember, this is that pull-in zone, so you have to do it during the last phase. So we have our rogue run in first. He pops it. Start getting pulled in. We wait for the debuff to go away. Our next rogue goes in. Wait for the debuff to go away. Then I go in. Wait for the debuff to go away. And there we go. And now the boss moved around all the stars, so we need to kind of keep an eye on where they are. That way we know where to run. I think he's going to relocate them one more time anyways. Yeah. So there's the relocation. Now we need to run to them. And there we go. And that's pretty much the whole fight. And the hard mode of this is on normal, like on regular Mythic, you can have the same person soak that collapsing star on the floor, the like circle zone that we have to soak that pulls us all in. But on hard mode, you have to do it like you have to have a different person each time because we get like a bigger debuff. You can see this big debuff that's on the rogue right here, and we tried immuning it and stuff and it doesn't work. Go, we're soaking it. Now we're gonna have the shaman go, and we're gonna have our tank do the last one. That's it. And then you get your cool mount, cool achievement, you get some loot. So that's it for hard mode Tazavesh. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Hope you're enjoying the patch. See you later.